Hello everybody, it's me JD Studios and welcome back to another video. Today I have a MOC for you. As you can see, it's a big hangar to support my Imperial Marauder lander. I have actually modified the lander itself, so I'll show off those modifications later, but I want to focus on the hangar first because that's the new stuff mostly, because that's only seen a few changes but not major changes. So let's start off over here with the command centers. So starting back here at the rearmost command center, we have, I made two of these at each end. They're identical with the exception of what minifigures are in the interior, but at the top we have a view port of outside onto the main hangar deck, and there are some swivel chairs with some consoles with some printed pieces on there, and then we have an officer viewing the hangar deck. Beneath there we have a little barracks. It's only actually got 3 studs, so I was quite limited in what space I could use, like 3 studs widthwise and then lengthwise different, but so I only opted to have the single bed rather than having 2 beds down here, just because I didn't really have a lot of space. And then I wanted to put some armor racks, and I put a spot for a helmet, so you've got a stormtrooper sleeping, the mortar trooper, I think it was, yeah, mortar trooper getting his helmet and a blaster. Now on the other side, as you can see, it's basically the same thing, nothing different except there's no officer there and there's no trooper there. Now on top we have some greebling, which I actually really like how this centered dish turned out. I think it looks really nice with these pieces hanging off the back. There's a look from the front. Now, taking a look at the cranes, this was probably the part that I was least satisfied with, I guess. They didn't turn out as well as I would have hoped. I may change them in the future if I keep the MOC around long enough, which I probably will because I'm moving back to uni soon, so I won't be at home to dismantle it, so I'm probably not going to end up dismantling it. But yeah, the cranes, they're not terrible. I feel like maybe one of my main issues is the actual design of the tower. There is some internal detailing which I added in there, I thought it would be nice, so I added some different pieces going up the top, and it does have some old control things. Obviously this can move forward and it can grapple stuff, and it has a little handhold, so the pilot of the crane can just pull themselves up to the top. Now moving over to the main hangar area, we have some crates and some canisters. We have a little gonk droid, there are 3 of them in this. We have a custom loading cast. This does have some missiles which are going to be loaded onto the ship, and then a blaster rack and a crane. Now this is actually based off the design for the one that came in the Y-Wing back in 2016. I believe it was 2016 at least, but I didn't have certain parts, so I had to change it out a teeny bit. So for example, the wheel is usually meant to be a control panel. I didn't have a spare one of those because they're already used on this ship, and I didn't have these in yellow, they were in more of an orange yellow piece. And then we have another transport speeder with a step ladder. There are 2 of each, one on each side, so there's one there, you can see an Imperial climbing up there, and there's another one over there. We also have some control panels over here. This is to operate the main locking mechanism which holds the ship in place and prevents it from taking off whilst it's being worked on. This can actually open, I'll show that in a sec, and that can move backwards and forwards, but it can also be locked into place, which is currently what it is right now. We have 2 stormtroopers guarding that, and a little lever to release the mechanism. Even though the lever doesn't actually work and it's just there for aesthetic effect rather than actually having any practical use. To be fair, that is actually it basically. It's just the same thing kind of repeated on each side, but there's a full overview of what it looks like on all sides. Now, to open the mechanism, you simply pull these pieces apart. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, so I'm going to pause. So as you can see, the pieces just fold back and they will sit on top of their respective control panels. They do fold out all the way, but they don't actually have to. And this will allow the ship to be lifted off. It will also give access to the ship. So I have actually made a few modifications to the ship itself. So the back looks different. I've changed it, so I've moved the engines up higher, although they are still relatively close together. They aren't actually like pushing each other apart, which was kind of what I had going before. I've also changed the actual way that it's panelled, because one of the issues I had was, one, the gap was a bit bigger in between each bit, but more than that, it was causing the plates to be bent down, because it turns out it wasn't actually level. But if I lift it off, now it comes off much easier, and it's much easier to put back on. Now, as you can see, there are noticeably some details that have changed about the internals of the ship. So inside here, I've added just some little detailing. I kind of wanted to have some sort of like engine internals. There's a printed piece just in there. Just able to see it now. Got some crates and some seating. We also have the ladder that goes down into the Marauder. I can't really reach it from here, but the Marauder, you can actually lift up that and go directly from the ship into there, which I've shown before. I also added across the entire length of it these green pipes. I thought they looked really nice. It was just a little bit of extra detail. I've also added these handheld control points along the ship. There's also this panel with a lever which would represent you turning down the mechanism, and there's someone climbing into one of the ships. There's one by each mechanism. I've lined it up with this part here, which is actually what holds the locking mechanism, the actual mechanism in place. Now, the main thing that's changed as well is the front. Before it was very angled, now it's just one big piece that sits on the front. It doesn't move around anywhere near as much. I also had these guns because I thought they looked quite cool, and the cockpit piece just opens on a hinge. But that's not the only thing. So as you can see in the cockpit, before I had one pilot, now I can fit two pilots in here. So I thought it made more sense to be able to fit two pilots to control such a large ship. So you can actually just sit two pilots side by side within the cockpit, which is really nice. I really like that detail. It was one of my favourite additions to the ship. The only problem was that it made it a bit more difficult to actually access the interior of the ship, but there you go, you can see the pilots just through there. Alright, so I'm then going to remove the ship and show you what it looks like without it. So before I actually remove the ship, you have to open up these clamps here, which allows this to retract. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, but these, oops, they will pull back. They're not actually meant to pull back that far, that was an accident, but they will pull back on each side, which allow easier lift off. So there we have the hangar with the actual ship removed. So as you can see, the main thing that supports it is actually this build here. This is what the ship sits on, because I realised that it was going to be really, really unstable if I had two pieces that kind of came together to hold it in place, because the whole build is very, very hefty, so it needed something very sturdy to hold it in place. And then I had these, it was always meant to be able to wrap around the entirety of the ship, and that's exactly what it does. I actually really like how it turned out, and I think one of the main things that I had to contend with was I wanted to have it to be like a relatively clean floor, but I didn't have enough red tiles to do the whole thing, so I ended up going with black for the centre where the things would land, and then plated around in red, did some sloping, which came out really nicely. I'm really happy with how that turned out, and then outlined it in dark tan, then red. And I think as a whole this has turned out exactly how I wanted. I also really liked how the lining turned out. I did some lining around the entirety of it when I was building. I set out some spots where I was going to build, the rest was where I wasn't going to build, and I used the black lining to lay that out. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this mock showcase. Leave a like if you did. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.